All right, so let's see how many people we got on here. 23. It's 7:38. This is good enough as far as I'm concerned.
I
Yeah.
don't see Mark.
So let's.
I don't see Mark on, so we have no U.S. representation unless somebody here is from the U.S. But
well, I'm sure they're
Yeah.
busy with their
That's
election
fine.
stuff going on. So
Max was going to try.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
what we'll do is let's get right to the show and tell, right? And then we can move along, right? So Eric, I don't know. I know Maurizio sent some stuff in, but I don't know who else sent anything in. So I'll pass it over to you.
You got it.
You got the way to go there. So
thank you, David. All right, just moving everything around here. Okay, so got to. Well, these four, and then of course Glenn sent me his latest update on his Google Photo Drive. So Brian's is a quick kind of a recap on the Cleveland show that you guys were just talking about. So we'll do that one at the end. So we're going to jump in with Derek to start. Did Derek see you on yet?
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. Sorry, didn't see you. Oh, PowerPoint, right. This is the first. There you go. Oh.
Uh-oh.
Go ahead.
And
sorry.
I trust you can hear me.
I use Google Suite, not a Microsoft person anymore. So yeah, go ahead. We can hear you.
So this is my continuation on my Airspeed Ambassador. Bottom right, you can see what the shape of what an Airspeed Ambassador looks like. Twin engine, high wing, British commuter from 1946-47. It was Churchill's favorite airplane, but then it got beaten out by the Vickers Viscounts that were coming online with BEA. Anyway, I'm still down in the depths of the rabbit hole with this vacuform kit. And when you do a vacuform kit, you start off with a vacuform and then you go places which your mother and the priest would tell you not to go. So here I am building the tailplane of the model top left. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the parts cut out from the vac form sheet did not match the parts on the best plans I had, and I thought they were as good as you get. So I stuck a paper copy of the plan in between each half of the fins and in the horizontal surface, and where the vacuum form parts did not match the plan, I filled it in with super glue and contoured it to match. So when I finished that, I then would put the fin, and again, I don't know if you can see my cursor, drop the fin into this little box that I have created in the center of my picture. And if it fits good, then the shape is as accurate as you get. Same thing with the horizontal tail plane. The parts from the back form sheet were way off in chord and span relative to the pretty good plans. So I stuck a paper copy of the plans in between the top and bottom parts and then filled in with super glue to correct the contour to match the plans. In the tail plane, you see I've carved in the control surfaces. The ones running horizontally are done with a very thin saw, and the ones running vertically, the hinge lines, are done with a scalpel lined up against a piece of Dymo tape, or these days there's much better panel line carving guide tapes. So I run a scalpel backwards along the control line a couple of times to deepen it. Then I turn the scalpel 90 degrees and run it perpendicular to the direction of travel. And this gives you an inclination on the control surface relative to the depth of the hinge line. So I do that on the flap, but not on the flying surface. And you'll see what I mean if you look at the Airspeed Ambassador one day. Top right, I now have to get the fins together with the horizontal surface as true as possible. So I'm resorting to my favorite Lego jig. And I've put these vertical bits of clothes hanger to tell me where the vertical of the fin is, so I can look at it visually to line up again visually with the horizontal tail plane. Bottom left, I've completed that process and it's primed, and you can see in addition the control surfaces for the rudders and the cut or carved surfaces for the rudders and for the ailerons. I've even put in trim tab in both the fin and the stabilizer, but that again is pretty hard to see. Bottom right, I'm again at my Lego table, and I have the tail plane attached, lined up longitudinally and horizontally and left to right 0 angle. Then I glue it on. So that's how I use Lego fairly extensively when I'm building a kit like this. So that's the tail plane and the assembly. Next picture.
This guy.
And this is the engine cowl for the Ambassador. Top left, the engine cowl in the kit just did not make muster at all. This is the engine nacelle of the kit. Back end, you can see the part of the undercarriage doors. They are narrow at the front and wide at the back. So I had to make undercarriage doors to match that opening out of my Spears box. And down in the bottom, kudos to the man who can recognize this. This actually is a bullfighter undercarriage bay, which has been inserted in and made use of that way. So the nacelle from the kit has to go, and I'm replacing it with this object here. Any of you guys know what that object is?
What the hell?
Okay, it's a 1/48 scale Meteor, Gloucester Meteor engine intake, provided as a replacement by a company called Two Mics. I haven't heard much of them lately. Anyway, it's a resin replacement. And top right, you can see the Meteor engine intake cowl chucked in my mini lathe. And I had to make the orifice slightly smaller, so I have a little bit of transparent plastic pipe stuck in, and I'm now just fairing it in and joining it to the orifice of the engine intake. Bottom left, I've got the Meteor cowl chucked in my jig, and if you go to bottom right, you can see the result of what I'm doing. On the inboard and the outboard of each engine cowl, there was an exhaust ramp, which was deep at the front and shallow at the back. But I had to, back now to bottom left, I had to cut out a space to accommodate that exhaust ramp. So I've got the cowling jigged. I'm using my vertical part of the drill and a router to cut forward, transverse, and then backwards to cut out this open square, hoping all the time that the pressure would not cause the hollow cowling to explode or crack or do anything really bad on me. Anyway, both cowlings worked extremely well. And bottom right, you can see the cowling in place with the exhaust ramp, and the exhaust ramp had a cowling gill, which had to match in dimension, top and bottom, fore and aft, and the curvature had to match the curvature of the Meteor cowling. So where, oh, where would I get one of those things from? Well, if I look at the bottom of the picture, and again, can you guys identify this thing in the bottom?
Okay.
The milling
points.
machine?
The thing, the dark blue thing in the bottom right picture.
Looks like something off a Thunderbolt.
This is from a Revell 140 scale Sky Raider, which was a spectacular kit when I was 12 years old, but times have changed. And the engine gills, the cowling gills of the Sky Raider happened to match exactly what I was looking for. So I just cut out the cowling gill and inserted it into the front of the exhaust ramp, and that looked after that problem. Let's go to the next picture.
Derek, is
Yeah.
that a Unimat 1?
It's a Unimat, which is a German machine which I've had
Yeah, I
for
know, I know.
years and years. But it's a mini lathe or a micro lathe, and it does work reasonably well. But
Yeah, I
there
recognize
are
the,
things which it cannot do.
yeah, I recognize the chuck. It says
Yeah.
MCO. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've had it for years.
Yep.
Anyway, this bunch of pictures now, if you look at bottom right, you'll see the finished product, which is an undercowling air intake for the engine, which is wide at the front and narrow at the back. And starting off with the, if I go to top left, if I start off with the Meteor jet intake cowl, it has a compound curve front to back and from side to side. Now, how on earth am I going to match that? I could plunge mold some plastic down onto it, but the white strip that you see actually matched it perfectly. And that came from a Vacuform Canadair Argus engine cowl, which I happen to have, and which I will not now use because the Argus has a resin replacement for the Match 2 kit, the Britannia kit. So I cut a strip out of the Argus engine cowl and nacelle, laid it down, and it matched perfectly. So all I had to do was to elevate the front to make an opening. The back, as I say, is narrower than the front, so I had to cut it narrow at the back. And top right, you see it glued into position. I stuck it at the back with super glue. I elevated the front till the intake looked right according to plans. And then I had to build the side walls of the engine intake, which right now are straight or flat or a straight line. They have to be curved. So bottom left, this is the primed, again, a half a view of the Airspeed Ambassador as to see what it looks like. And I'm curving the side walls of the engine intake, which again, I have to do with my fingers crossed because too much is not good and not enough is not good either. And just, we were talking about windows last time. There's the windows, and again, top right, convex top and bottom. Bottom right is pretty much the finished product. You can see the opening in the engine intake, which is equal size from side to side, wide at the front, narrow at the back, and high at the front and low at the back. And I've tried to curve the side walls as much as I dare. I ended up with that appearance. What I've got here is I'm at a painting stage, so I can see the light at when I look up out of the rabbit hole. The light gray is British Royal Light Gray, which Tamiya Aerosol has a can of. The black at the top is also painted, and scale black would not be true black. It's got to be cut back a little bit with white to about NATO black color. So this is off black and lightened gray. And then meet somewhere where the red line is. So the red line is actually not paint, it's a strip of decal. And the red decal happened to fall exactly where the black met the gray. So the red decal didn't have very good color density. So it was showing the black edge as against the gray edge. So I had to resort to putting a strip of white decal along where the red decal would go to cover that. Then I put on a line of red decal. It was good, but I could still see an edge. So I've got 2 layers of red decal over a layer of white decal to show the cheat line for this Ambassador. And this airline is Danair London, which I thought, well, that's a pretty plain looking airliner color, but when you put it all together, it actually is pretty dazzling for most people traveling in everyday circumstances. So those are some of the processes I've done, and later I'll show you the end of the project as I return to daylight out of the rabbit hole. Anyway, so those are my pictures, guys.
Well, thank you, Derek. That's looking fabulous. Yeah, I can't wait to see the finished product.
Great work, Derek.
Amazing.
Magnificent suffering.
Yeah. Great, unusual subject. Stuff you don't see. That's great.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's nice to see.
That could almost be a modern aircraft.
It is. I think the stimulus for the development of airplanes like the Dash 8 and all of those commuter
Yeah.
airplanes, but it had a very short lifespan.
No, you can see the lineage for sure.
Mm.
We got Maurizio up next.
Hey guys. So October, I decided to take it a bit easier and ended up getting something pretty much out of the box, which is the RPG kit. It's a 135th Phalanx C-Whiz. I did it in Canadian colors because they did have the decals for that. So I got some references on the web, and I like the colors and all that. Plus, it's kind of national pride. It's a good kit. Lots of photo etch, but you know, there's photo etch and there's photo etch. This one I felt it was good in that it was pretty thin and it already scored in all the headlines, so it was relatively easy to fold and put together. I used a technique that Harvey had talked about earlier, which was using that UV light resin. And that really kind of helped making sure that I could sort of position, like all those steps you see on the side, those are photo etch. And so, you know, if you're using super glue, you really only have one chance to position them. Whereas with the resin, you get some play time with that. So you can really position it. And then when you're happy with it, you sort of shoot it with some UV light, and that will harden. Now, turns out that, you know, that stuff is not supposed to be actually sort of a glue. And so you're supposed to reinforce it with CA afterwards. For many of these, I didn't, and they seem to be robust enough. We'll see, you know, time will tell whether they're going to stick around for a while. But the technique worked well for me, and it's a good one. Of course, the challenge with UV light is that, you know, if you put it on spots where it's not, you know, it's dark, then it will not harden because the light will not reach it. And so it's not sort of a universal thing, but if you put dots where you can get the light to reach, then it's good. And so, I mean, the kit is really good. I mean, I really enjoyed building it. The only thing I would say is the instructions were so in that it doesn't give you any sort of painting guides throughout the build. So you kind of got to figure out what you got to paint when, because, you know, you don't want to get stuck with something that's unreachable. And also the paint guides are kind of so in terms of, it gives you this legend, which is just colors, and the colors sometimes are not accurate. So you got to, you know, it's sometimes difficult to interpret, if you will. It doesn't actually tell you where it wants to lay what paint, but you know, that's what references are for.
Exactly.
You want to go to the next one, Eric?
Sure thing.
Yeah, so a little more detail. The one on the left, just to give you the sense of scale, and then the right is just a little detail. The base actually took me longer to build than the actual kit itself. So if you see sort of below at the base where you see all those little, I don't know what you call them, but it's almost like blades, if you will, and then the posts, etc. All that was scratch built. You can kind of tell it's not 100% straight. So, but that was all built from scratch, and then, you know, just a bunch of wiring and piping, etc. Now, I should say, I know that Glenn actually spent a long time on a CRAM, which is kind of the equivalent platform, but with basically missile rather than guns. And of course, he did an amazing job. So it turns out, if you go, do you want to go to the next one? Yeah, so a lot of the details that you're seeing here, I mean, he had replicated as well. And I got to say that in many cases, when I started looking at this stuff, I sort of said, oh my God, my stuff is crap compared to what he had done. So it sort of forced me to rethink a lot of these things.
Dude,
And,
this is beautiful. I wish I had put this sort of detail
like
in mind. God,
and it's not. But honestly, I mean, can you go to the next one, Eric, for a minute? And go to the next one yet still. Because I think no. Okay, there's a detail on the left picture here, for instance. If you look at the very bottom, there's this detail which looks like these sort of piping. That piping, which I believe it's cooling water. Okay, I think it's cooling for because it's not electrical. I think it's some sort of fluid. That piping, the first time I did it, it was such crap. And then I started looking at Glenn's stuff on Facebook because you'd done a similar thing, and your work is just totally exquisite. And I thought, oh my God, like there's no way I can live with the crap I did. And so I redid it all, and it's still nowhere close to your stuff, but it's a lot better what I had. So thanks for being sort of like setting the bar, if you will, in terms of, you know, trying to do some decent work on the stuff.
Well, I don't know who's who, because you guys, like, it looks the same type of quality to me. So kudos to both of you guys.
Yeah, well, thanks, sorry, but it's not even close. So.
Maurizio, what's the scale again, Maurizio?
That's 135.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you put in more detail for the extra cabling that I'm looking at on the right-hand picture. Like, I never even tried to do stuff like that. I never had pictures of it. I love that. I wish I had done that on mine.
Yeah, I think that's actually, I think that's pretty real, because I mean, I've seen, now there is a 1/6 scale, one of these 1/6 scale, which is a built, a model you can buy built. It's expensive. It's like, I don't know, it's $1,200. It's
Good.
from like, you can look it up. I think it's 1/6, I'm pretty sure. And they got some really good pictures on their website, and a lot of it I got from their websites because it looked like they did a lot of good research. But then you can also get some of those details. So I mean, I used kind of a combination of real and that model to kind of replicate it.
Yeah.
And some of that cabling was included in that. But yeah, and so I mean, the posts where what took me the longest, because you got to create all the little, you know, the little
That's
to get the cabling through and all that stuff. But it's part of the fun, I guess. So anyway, it's good kit. It's good enough that I bought another one, which is called the Goalkeeper, which is a Dutch equivalent, built by the Dutch for their Navy, and they sold it around, etc. By the same maker. It's a lot simpler than this. It's got way less photo etch, few parts, and but it's a 30 millimeter, the GAU 8 cannon, which is the 7-barrel cannon that's actually used by the A10. So they converted that to a C-Whiz, and I'm looking forward to building that. There is something that actually Glenn is setting up, is organizing a blitz coming up on this weekend, and that's what I'm going to build. So anyways, I mean, it's a somewhat an unusual subject. I really loved it.
Yeah.
It's a good kit, a lot of good detail, and you can add a whole bunch of stuff to build bases and kind of put it in context type of thing. So really enjoyed this one a lot.
Excellent. Very cool. That's it. Yeah, looks definitely a fun build.
Yes.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, the other thing that was kind of cool about this is that the instructions call for a light blue from Tamiya. I forget the actual number.
It's wrong.
Right? Yeah, it was wrong. So I ended up using, I tried my best to approximate the Canadian Navy, sort of that bluish green or greenish blue, whatever you want. So I actually ended up mixing that light blue with a I think it's Japanese Navy gray, which is kind of a greenish gray. And so if you mix the two, and I forget the ratio now.
If you need the paint, just give me a holler and I'll send you a sample.
Okay.
The last time I was in Ottawa in 2019, as I'm leaving the ship, the guy gives me a chunk of cardboard and says, "Don't sit on this for a while." And when I got on board ship, they'd started painting it for me.
Oh wow!
And I also have several cans of the stuff.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, I try to replicate it as best I can based on pictures I could see. And I thought I actually posted it on some of the sites on Facebook, and I got some feedback saying it was close enough. So
yeah, the white ensign is too dark. I have a formula with testers, model masters, that's a little dark but still closer, and the actual paint. But the idea of the Japanese Navy gray is interesting, very close in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mixed it with the light blue.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's
did you get a
surprising.
little more bluish tinge?
Yeah, it really works in a phenomenal way. A buddy and I were on Toronto in the Synchrolift once, and they were towing Sackville into the Bedford Basin in the fog, and she disappeared. And then HMCS Charlottetown went in and disappeared at the same place. And the two of us are looking at each other and saying, okay, Western Approach has disappeared at this distance, and the new Green Gray disappeared at the same distance. Like, it was so weird.
Wow.
And my Australian buddies have said they've seen lines of ships coming into Sydney Heads, and there's one ship missing, and 5 minutes later you realize the Canadian ship's there.
Wow.
So it's a very good color for a lot of conditions.
Yeah, and frankly, I think it's so much more interesting than sort of your typical battleship neutral gray.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very pretty. I mean, when you
Yeah.
see a whole ship in that color, it was, some of the pictures are amazing. So yeah, so I think that's it, is it?
Yep, yeah, that was it. Thank you, Maurizio. We're getting a lot of neat variety of models in lately, and keeping that going. Ted, you're up next.
Whoa.
Oh,
Whoa.
Nice.
yeah.
How big is that?
I've had this, I have, in amongst my dabbling, especially back in my drinking days, I bought a lot of figures and never got around to painting any. And this one I probably bought around 1980 or thereabouts. It's a 90 millimeter figure of a Cavalier officer of foot. It was circa 1645. It was an officer in the in Cromwell's, actually Fairfax, Lord Fairfax was the leader of the what they called the New Model Army, and they were the guys that were the military for the Parliament that were constantly at fight, I think, for well over 15 years with the royalty, which seemed to be the way they did things back then. They had about 3 or 4 civil wars, and what they did is if the Parliament had their own military, and they were during that time period they were trying to get it more organized. So that's where they ended up with the New Model Army, which actually was what became the modern British military as time went on. But before that, it was just every baron or powerful guy who had his own little fiefdom and had his own little army, whatever he could afford. And they just actually sometimes the parliamentary military, if the landowner that didn't like something that the parliament was doing, he'd march his band of soldiers in, and they were sort of like January 6th down in the States. They would bugger up Parliament until they got their way, and then they'd turn around and help Parliament out fighting the king. Anyways, this I've had this guy, as I said, since about 1980, and when I first finally decided to get around to painting him, just recently, I found I had a book on. That's actually the only reason I know anything about the England's Civil War, because I had bought a book way back when I bought the figure, and it turns out the Eric, if you can move on to the other slides. Yeah, this is the sort of close to what the figure represents. This is the officer and Lord Fairfax thing, and the figure comes with that plumed hat. But when I started trying to paint, I found out that he wasn't quite what the figure was. So I think it's Mike, a fellow by the name of Mike French, made the masters for this. So what he did was he's got that orange sash, and the sash is to at the time when these guys were fighting against the royalists, which were the king's armies, they didn't really have standard uniforms. So what they had to do is make sure they wore colored sashes and stuff like that Otherwise, they'd ride into a camp and end up finding out that they were in the enemy's camp, and they'd promptly get captured. So he had an orange sash on, which is on the figure, and he had the hat, but the rest of him was somewhat different. If you move to the next slide, Eric. From here, I got mainly the coat and the metal armor piece, which a lot of them wore because they've got this molded onto the figure. And the boots are closer to the boots they give you in the kit. So if you move on to the next one, Eric. And this guy, you'll see the guy to the left, there's a little orange piece of cloth just below his pant legs. And that's molded onto the kit. So I just figured I'd paint that the same orange as the sash. And the cuff shirt on the guy in the middle is how they've got the cuffs molded on the kit, which isn't what that officer from the first plate did, but it all works out. So I just sort of hodgepodged all the stuff and learned a bit about British history while I was at it. And I'm not really going to work too hard because this is my first figure. I'm not going to work at too much highlighting or shadowing. I'm going to save that a bit for the face. The rest of it's just painted in various Humbrol paints with fine paint brushes, and the paint's thinned down so there's no brush streaking. I just want to get them done. So I think I'm probably about a week away from finishing them. So
Hey, Ted, can you even get Humbrol anymore, or just old stuff you had?
Oh, I've had this guy since I've tons of my stuff, especially my figures, I've had since the late 70s, early 80s, and they're just stuck in boxes because I pull them out every once in a while and say, man, I got to start working on that, and then I put it back away and work on something else. Or now I work on the house that I bought with my wife. So I don't get much done, but I just finally came across this guy once too often, and I said, Chris, on this, I'm going to get him painted, whether he looks good or not. Doesn't matter as long as he gets finished. So
Humbrol is still available.
It is?
Yes, but the Europeans, when Brexit happened, there was some issues about what's in the paints, and they have changed the formulas. And it's not. They'll tell you here that they can't get it. I got to be honest. There's a lot of hobby stores with a lot of BS. It's still available. It's harder to get. Canada Post doesn't like shipping it, although they ship lots of styrofoam packaging. You get all sorts of issues that it's flammable, but it can be brought in, and it has been brought in. It's just not too many people are going to the effort anymore.
Is it still in the same little tins with a little lid?
Yes, but like I said, the formula has changed.
Wow.
So,
yeah, those go back a long time for me.
Yeah,
I probably got enough Humbrol to last me until I die. So I don't go out of my way to try and buy too much. But I love using it because I've discovered, even for working on aircraft interiors, if you get it thinned down enough and you use a wide flat brush, I don't bother airbrushing the interiors too much. I slop it on, it levels itself out, and then I just paint the details. And once you glue the fuselage together, you don't see any abnormalities in it.
Right. Wow. Cool.
Yeah.
Good. Very nice.
All right. Thank you very much, Ted. We'll go over to Glenn now and update on the gyro kite.
If you scroll about halfway down.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure. Yeah, that's about where we ended up last time doing the cushion, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And then you switch.
Yeah,
gears.
a lot has happened. I stopped working on the model because I needed a mental health break on it, and I did not heed the warning of my mother or priest, so I started to build a base. And I didn't want to just plunk this on a flat old, X plaque that I had, gotten from several years ago. So I thought, oh, okay, well, let's post this thing in its natural environment. And its natural environment was perched on a tiny little rickety launch pad on the back of a U-boat. So that's what I set out to build.
Yeah.
And these things were pretty unique. They were deployed on the larger IXD2 boats, and they were disassembled and thrown into watertight containers. But I didn't have the patience or the skill or the plans to do this. So I thought, oh, there's lots of pictures of this thing perched on the back, like in the left-hand picture there, when they were just undergoing trials. So I thought I'd replicate that, and I had all the dimensions that I needed. So I set building a 1/16 scale section of a U-boat tower. And if you scroll down a fair bit, you'll see pretty much the end result. I won't bore you with the details, but it was made.
How far?
It was made from brass, a lot of soldered brass. I took liberties with the construction of the pad and dimensions, but according to a bunch of pictures, it looks pretty good, I think.
Yeah.
And it worked
This
out.
was your mental health break?
That was my mental health break. Yeah, call it what
Okay.
you will.
Team breakdown.
Beautiful. Beautiful work.
Yeah, it's great, Glenn.
Yeah.
So then I thought, oh, okay, well, if I built the base, I better get the actual thing done. So by that point, I was at the rotor blades, which are monstrous, giving this thing a 18-inch diameter rotors.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, Glenn,
So there was a lot of real estate to cover there.
Glenn,
Yeah.
on the previous slide, did you notch out the tubing, or did you use solder to sort of make up the because otherwise it's going to be tangent, right? If you cut it square.
On which ones? On those?
There. Is that notched?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I had all the plans done up in CAD, and I just created, paper blueprints to mock things up. So actually getting those little extensions out the back of the rail was probably the most difficult thing, because I had the curved railing and I had the platform. Now I had to tie them all together. So there was probably a good hour or two of fiddling, getting the connection point on the main railing proper. But
And
yeah,
you
that's
what,
curved to match the diameter of the topped rail there, just so yeah, when I put it all together, I didn't have a lot of gaps to fill with solder. Everything
so
lined up pretty well.
I'm assuming a round file to sort of match the diameter. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, and correction, it was a Type 9D, not IXD U-boat. So the height of that base actually doesn't go all the way down. I just wanted to get it down, halfway, so the seats were showing, and then the rest, just disappearing into the abyss. So I got the rotor blades all done. The next daunting thing was rigging it all, and down the rabbit hole we went, finding out different types of cord and wire that I could use, and I settled on a bunch of them for various different things. Again, measured everything out, making sure everything was the proper length, and fortunately everything went together beautifully. Then we just started throwing on more details, like cable here, a cord there, and what I just finished off was rigging up the parachute system, which is the last photos. And to me, that is the most satisfying thing, and the thing I put off for the longest, because there was so little room to work in installing a lot of this stuff. And I was fearful I was going to break this thing in half if, I had one wrong move or I sneezed at the wrong time. I thought it would fall apart in my hands, but no. So that's where it is right now. The only thing remaining that I can see is making the seat belts. And that's it. I'm not putting a pilot figure in. And so everything except for the seat belts is pretty much done. And just for a sense of scale, that's the size of the base.
Glenn, when you did in researching this, did you read or get any news idea of how many guys got injured flying this thing?
No, they only had 3 operational as far as I was able to
Okay.
to find out. None of them ever had to do like a crash dive to get the hell out of Dodge.
Oh, right.
So never tried out the parachute system as far as I knew. And the photos are very few and far between for the details on these things. They're all pretty much museum pieces that I had to spend a lot of time looking at. But yeah, they were only operational deployed on the 9D2 boats, and they did the trials on the 9C, which is the one that I'm replicating. Far simpler, I might add. Yeah. So I took the easy route.
Yeah, right.
That's the easy
this kind of continues with the theme of really weird ass type of models that people are building these days. So I think it's right up there.
Along with steampunk.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
So, and I got a question. When you're soldering, are you using a liquid flux? You painting it on?
No, I'm actually using solder paste.
Paste.
Yeah, good choice.
Yeah, I've been using solder paste for years. I avoid soldering irons whenever I can because they scare the hell out of me. I've had enough burns on my hands to last me a lifetime. So I use like a hot air blower or resistant soldering when I can. But the solder paste is a game changer. Mm-hmm. It really is.
But what do? You actually brush it where you want the solder to stick? You brush it?
No, it's like a thick waxy paste that you just get it out of a syringe and you apply a dab of it, and it's sticky enough that it will stick a piece in place, and then you just heat it up and boom, it melts.
What?
And you got a solder joint. It's beautiful stuff.
Yeah, I remember that stuff. So you're not using the iron, you're not using the. Oh, can you tell me what that is? What is that stuff?
It's called solder paste. I got it from an electronics store online many years ago. The brand that I got probably 15, 20 years ago was called Koki, Koki, but there's lots of different brands available. And there's different formulations. I'm not sure what's better, what's worse, but they're all pretty much the same, I think. And it's, once you use this stuff, you'll never go back to regular solder wire.
So do you use like a little one of those micro
torches?
Yeah, those things.
Yes,
a little butane torch.
Yeah.
But just heat that up, or even like a barbecue lighter. You know, with the long extension, use one of those just to heat it up, and that works just fine. Or even a hot air blower tip with a propane torch.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Hey, Glenn.
Yeah,
Glenn, you alluded to resistance soldering. What?
Yep.
You have like an American Beauty or what?
What?
American Beauty makes resistance soldering units.
Oh, okay. No, I got one off of Micromark many years ago.
That's the really cheap one. Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Okay. Yeah. Resistance soldering is used a lot by model railroaders when they're doing brass detailing.
Yes. Right? And it's a real game changer. You get pinpoint accuracy. You don't heat up whole swaths of area. And if you have small details that are really close together, regular soldering, once you heat up one spot, the heat spreads and desolders everything else. No, this one is like a pinpoint accuracy for doing soldering.
The other trick that model train guys use, as well as jewelers, is you start with your highest melting point solder. Mm-hmm. And as you add detail, you go to a lower melting point solder. So that what you're doing is you can heat it, but you're not going to disturb the other details. Jewelers will do this. Model train guys, model railroaders, especially guys.
I like that. That requires a lot of planning, though, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. So typically, the bigger parts get done with the highest melting point solder.
Yeah.
And then
I like that.
The British have got this stuff down to. You know what, Glenn? We can chat about this some other time.
Sure.
But a buddy of mine
like
is a fantastic scratch builder of locomotives, and those are the techniques that they use. So keep that in mind, folks.
Wow.
Great.
Solder paste, the word of the day.
Looks great.
All right, guys. And then that's it for the models. But Brian sent me some pictures from, I guess, this past weekend. Sorry, Captain Miscellaneous sent me some pictures from this last weekend on his way to Cleveland show.
Cleveland rocks.
Yeah, so a bunch of us from the club went down to Cleveland this past weekend on the Sunday. I had to get up at 3:45 in the morning to go down with Lorenzo and Mike and Sandy. We all went in the same vehicle and down the highway to the United States of something or other. It's the only model show that I ever saw in my life that had a sign on the road, model show. So it's a big one then.
That must have confused a lot of people.
Yeah.
Kind of model show.
Or disappointed a few.
Here's a nice picture coming up, the hill. You're in America when you see all of this, right? Yeah. And it's a nice looking day. So next picture. So this is what it looked like, of course. High school gym, common situation. Vendors all around. About half the space in the gym was for vendors. Plus they spilled out into the hallways all over the place. Wow. So it was pretty good. Prices were not amazing because of the conversion right now, but there were, I think, 570 models on the tables. It was a record number.
Wow.
It was a really tough show. Next one. And there you go, a bit to the right there. Next one. All right. So this one here was like half scale, something like that. Bride of Frankenstein, and that one, People's Choice, of course, has a tradition, the physically largest model in the People's Choice Award. Yeah.
Not wrong.
Complete with acne. Hey.
There you go. Next. There you go. I love this one. Hell no. I'm the only one that noticed this one. Isn't that great? I love that one. I already looked this guy up. The kits for this thing are expensive, but yeah, loved it. Next. Yeah, plenty of aircraft, armor, tons of all that stuff usually. Let's see. Yeah, there's the Ghost of Kiev kit if you were wondering what that looked like. That's done really well. Yeah, armor. Yeah, Gongtroid. I love that thing. I got a Gongtroid at some point, but that JPG Productions is all out. Next, let's see. Yeah. Okay. So this one here, top center, that's actually Harvey's submarine. I didn't even know I was taking a picture of it. But best in category, best of show. You know what happens with the awards, right? I get one award. Lorenzo got 3 awards, and the judges just took all the other awards in the tables and just threw them at Harvey with a look of disgust.
I suppose that's a thank you, Brian, but I don't never heard it that way.
Harvey, that's payback for Albany.
That's true. That's very true. Very true. Yeah. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, no, you deserved it.
So that was the submarine top center. This is the stuff I look at, of course, the miscellaneous category. Lots of good stuff there.
Oh, that's neat.
Yep. And more miscellaneous. My bike is in the bottom right corner there.
I like the B24 down there. Yeah.
What's that?
How'd you do with your bike, Brian? This one?
Nothing. Yeah. Not a damn thing.
But you got it in Rochester, right?
I got second place in Rochester.
Right. Well, hey, any Sunday, right? So
what pissed me off is the one in the top right there. Somebody else did it. That's the same series. But it looks like they just kept the original chrome. They didn't strip the chrome or anything. Yeah. They didn't paint the tires. The tires don't look realistic. It's a fine looking model, but it's not. And they gave it first.
You can kind of tell, actually. It's got the original chrome on it, too.
Yeah. Brian, is that an apple crate?
That's an apple crate.
Yeah, I want one.
Yeah. They're thousands of dollars.
$1,500.
Which one's the apple crate?
Bottom right. The red.
It's a Stingray.
Okay.
It's a Schwinn Stingray. They had the apple crate, the orange crate.
That's what they call it, right? Okay.
The pea picker, which was green, and the lemon peeler, which was
You're talking a real one, right?
Yeah. The real ones are thousands. That's my section there. The snow speeder there got third. What the hell? Got nothing in Hamilton, so what are you gonna do? But I really like that. The probe there they had. Voyager there. That's a tough one to do.
Yeah.
I don't know if they got anything for that.
Yeah, but my buddy built that probe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he still alive?
Yeah. and it was my buddy that built that bike that beat yours.
Isn't that
Only
Voyager?
paint his tires. They don't look right. Ugh, okay.
What is that? Is that Voyager?
Yeah, Voyager.
I think it's Voyager.
V'ger.
V'ger.
Yeah, I built one of those. It's not that tough. It's a little
I
etched.
think, yeah. And I think these are just the awards that they threw at Harvey. Okay.
Oh
So there you
my.
go. It's over nice and quick. And it was entertaining, I hope. So there you go.
Yeah, wonderful presentation,
Oh.
Brian. Yeah.
One thing I want to ask at the lunchtime, some people were talking about 3D printing tech or something like that. And somebody said, oh, well, we'll tell you about it later. We'll send you an email. Does anybody remember that conversation?
Yeah, I do. It was between Rick Carlson and I. Rick is from Erie, Pennsylvania. He will send me some 3D print stuff, information, and I can cascade it to you, Brian.
What it
It's
was
a
called?
whole new topic, but I'm finally buying a 3D printer. I'm kind of tired of scratch building manually and casting
Okay.
resin. So
So now instead of winning most of the awards, you're just going to win literally.
I just program it in, man. Let the computer win.